Hi everyone, it's Mark here. I'm the founder of our Arts and Culture Network. I'm joined by Richard Byrne of Diversity PR. Richard is a full member of our gang, and we've been having fascinating conversations. So I wanted to introduce you to him and let you know a little bit more about what makes him tick. So Richard, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
What I love to get in these short interviews is the backstory. So you're doing fantastic work in PR and communications for a number of really important causes and clients. What's the story? How did you get to be doing this?
Yeah. Well, oh gosh, it goes back quite a long time. I was dressed up as Santa Claus, occupying the lobby of the Foreign Office, protesting against Britain bombing Iraq with a bunch of people. And it was my first go at doing some civil disobedience. And I was in there with people. We all got lifted out by the police, and it was very nice. And some of the police said they agreed with us. And when we were sat out on the pavement, I was saying to the folk who'd organised it, so that was great, but we haven't got any photos. No one knows this has happened. And they said, no. And I said, well, why not? And they said, well, we've all had a go at talking to journalists, and it was kind of a mixed bag. And we're all quite happy to get arrested and go to prison for this stuff, but we don't really want to do the ringing journalists and writing stuff to journalists. So I thought, well, I'd rather not go to prison, but I wouldn't mind having a go at contacting the journalists. So I started doing their PR for them, and pretty soon we had great things going on with national radio, newspaper, front page newspaper photos of our protests, and all sorts of people coming along to our protests. Mark Thomas, Caroline Lucas, a bunch of various celebrities, and we had endorsement from Rowan Williams, Benjamin Zephaniah, all kinds of great people. And yeah, we were regularly on 5 Live, and I was on 5 Live giving interviews myself quite a few times. And I had the phone number of people at the Today programme, and it was just, yeah, it kind of really built from there.
That's a great story to start with, but yeah, I can understand why you might have questioned that. What you're willing to go to prison, but we don't get any publicity out of it. Yeah, that's great. And so what sort of work are you doing now? I know that you've mentioned to me in the past that it tends to be traditional forms of media. So have you had any either shocking disasters or faux pas, or have you had any results that you've been particularly pleased with?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some stories I've done that have been just absolute bangers that I thought, if I don't get a hit with this, then I'm really not up to my worth. So I had, there was a dad and his daughter who made a board game during lockdown, and they did a homeschooling project. They created this board game and crowdsourced the artwork. So they invited pictures from kids all over the world to draw pictures for this thing, and they had a professional colorer who colored them in and made videos of him coloring them in, sort of stop motion things. So we had loads of great content, and we got that on BBC Breakfast and all of our local TV up here, and it was in the Guardian as well. So that went really well. And then I had another one with the worst record covers exhibition in the world. So again, fabulous story with lots of great pictures, and again, that was in the Guardian, got on lots of radio, TV, and we ended up saying no to some because the guy whose exhibition it was had had a stroke and he didn't want to do loads of interviews. So I had to say no to Mariella Frostrop, which was a different experience.
Yeah, I bet that was a bit scary.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, sometimes that's what happens. You have limits around the story that you do. Yeah. So, and then since then, I've done some PR work with another charity, Different Strokes. And again, one of our stories with Different Strokes was on BBC Breakfast, and the woman Kiara Beer, who'd made a series of one-handed hack videos for people who've had strokes, she got interviewed 1, 2, 3 times by 5 Live. Naga Chetty once, and Claire McDonald another time, and then they came back to her at Christmas time and said, oh, do you just want to do an interview, tell us what you've been up to? So yeah, loads of great coverage for those people.
That's great. It must be particularly pleasing to be sitting there and watching something that you've made happen, especially when you know that millions potentially of people are watching, some of whom will benefit or be entertained at least by it. So, and it's such an intangible, isn't it? Because there's that lovely old saying, I know half my marketing works, I just don't know which half. That's less so now with digital because we can track everything, but you can't beat the excitement of thinking you're on the Beeb or you're on the front page of a newspaper. It's a kind of a stamp of approval for whatever's going on, that it's newsworthy and human interest stories. So I imagine it's particularly pleasing when that happens. So
when it's great content as well, that's the thing. When you really know the journalist loves this, you know, you're not just like you've landed something good, but you're not just pleasing your client, but the journalist is thrilled to bits to do the story. That's a real
and they'll pick up the phone the next time you call. Yeah. It's the better it gets, the better it gets.
Yeah.
Right? So that's brilliant. But okay, so for the benefit of many of our members, I think 70% of our members in our LinkedIn group are freelancers. So probably potentially not in a position to retain a PR specialist, an expert with all of those wonderful contacts like you. So can you share a tip or two for the likes of, for example, an abstract artist who's in Cornwall, starting to sell their work, starting to get recognized? What would you, without wanting to give away free consultancy or the family silver, what three things would you be advising that person to do if they had to do the PR themselves while they got off the ground?
Yeah, I guess one of the things is to start with what you love. So if you read a particular newspaper or if you listen to a particular radio show, then just change your listening mode now and then to go, oh, okay, so is there a space for someone like me on this show? And do I hear anybody like me being interviewed on this show, or do I see anybody like me in this newspaper? And if so, what kind of story do they do about somebody like me? What does it take? Why is this person on there? To kind of try and think back through that process of, okay, they're doing something about this artist. Why? Because they've got a new exhibition that they've just launched. They're not talking about the things they did 3 years ago or 5 years ago. They're talking about a new thing that's happening now. So it's just keeping an eye on listening to the things that you like, and you're far more likely to get coverage from a media outlet that you know and that you engage with. Sending an email to some journalist you've never heard of in a publication that you never read, you just don't know what floats their boat. So if you find people who seem to be into what you're into, then find your way to how you can get in touch with them.
That's a great bit of advice. There are 3 W's there, isn't it? Who is it? What is it about, and why are they covering it? Kind of thing. For that's a spot on bit of advice. That's great. I'm sure you've got lots more of advice, and I'm going to let others track you down to ask any other questions on that. But what does a champagne referral look like, Richard? Type of organization, location, industry. I know you've told me in the past that you like to work in the quirkosphere. So if somebody were to call you this afternoon or ping you a line by email saying we need some help from somebody who understands PR, what would be a really good result just at the moment for you?
An organization that wants someone for 6 to 12 months, and that's got loads of stories to tell featuring people, because that's the thing, you really need people to be in the stories. So sometimes I've been approached by organizations and actually it's too problematic to tell the stories of any of the people involved because of vulnerabilities or something like that. But you really want folk who've got stories, who can face the camera, face a photo, and tell their personal story as part of whatever you're promoting on behalf of the business or the organization.
Great. I remember you saying on one of our events recently that I think you quoted something that Chicken Shed Theatre Company had done. And so that's the kind of organization that will have those stories, right?
Yeah, something like that. Kids organizations can be problematic because consents are so messy. So Different Strokes is gorgeous because Different Strokes is full of adults with great stories who can give consent, and they're well aware of what they're getting into when you do interviews, and no one's giving consent on someone else's behalf. It's pretty straightforward. They've got really banging stories.
Great. Richard, thank you so much for doing this. We all feel as though we know a little bit more about how you tick professionally. Thank you also for being one of our full members. I really appreciate it and your support, and there'll be lots of links wherever this appears. But in the meantime, I'll see you soon, I know, because you're a regular at our events, which is fantastic. Thank you so much, Richard, for doing this.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's a pleasure.